Well, and it's interesting, over time we've seen that the employer provides the baseline of education when the employee experience, if you think about that for just a minute. So an employee joins an organization, it's the organization's responsibility to talk with those new team members about policies, procedures, behaviors, expectations.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
The Hilton sale is on. Now through September 29th, you can save up to 20% on stays this fall and beyond. Long weekends, last-minute getaways, holiday gatherings. There's a Hilton stay for all of them. More moments, more experiences, more destinations. Now 20% off for a limited time because it matters where you stay. Don't wait. Book by September 29th and save up to 20% at Hilton.com. Terms apply. Hilton for the stay.
Hey, this is William Pitcap and Ryan Leary. You're listening to the You Should Know podcast. Today, what we're going to be talking about is employee health benefits trends. And no better than to talk to Amy Letke from MMA. And they have an evolving workforce report. And so we're going to be talking to her about the findings, some of the things she learned, and some of the things that they continue to learn as they do these things. So, Amy, hello. How are you?
Hi, William. I'm great. Nice to see you today.
You are great. Done. Full stop. We can end the recording right there. Done. Shortest podcast ever. So take us in. First of all, introduce yourself for the audience so that they understand who you are, your background, etc.
Great. Thanks, William. So my name's Amy Letke. I am the National HR Consulting Practice Leader for Marsh, McLennan Agency. And my role here is to educate our clients and prospects and team members, colleagues across the country, on HR consulting services. And Marsh McLennan Agency provides about 8 core HR consulting services that we share with our clients equally. And prior to MMA, I've had a history of being in human resources for pretty much my entire career. It kind of chose me versus me choosing it, which sometimes happens, right?
That's a reoccurring theme.
Yeah, probably all the time.
What we go to school for, or what our dreams are, may not always be the things that,
Once they get you in, they just keep pulling you back in. Now, do you remember a time?
Yeah.
I think when I was with Walmart, this 100 years ago, but HR was called personnel.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember these days?
I really do. It was in one of my first roles. I was in the personnel department. But the funny thing was, this is really funny. That was the time where the Society for Human Resource Management, that's our professional association,
right.
They actually changed their name.
They did.
I think it was ASPA. The American Society for Personnel Administrators or something like that. And then it became the Society for Human Resource Management. So everything, the world suddenly stopped on personnel and went to HR, Human Resources Management.
And we've seen a couple of iterations to this too, because then at one point it was human capital, and people were chief human resource officers. There was chief people officers or people operations. So it's like Animal Farm. The words keep changing,
Yes.
The job is a little bit different, but so you've got a wonderful background. Take us into this report. So I'm always Ryan. I love reports, love studies like this, because this is kind of an easy way for our audience to kind of gather some intel, and then they can always go download the report and then go deeper into it, etc. So let's take a look at the findings. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I think it's an amazing report of information. And I was just in Washington, D.C. this last week presenting at the From Day One conference.
Right.
And we were talking about what are the trends that we're seeing in the workplace in the future. And as I took a look at this report, I think there were some aha moments for me, even with my own staff, because I have about 25 team members on my team today with 4 generations, right? We've got boomers all the way to Xers. And what I think is so impactful about this report is the insight that it can provide for employers in terms of getting to know your employees. And the trends that we're seeing, there are similarities across the generations. And the one biggest similarity that did not surprise me is the desire for flexibility.
Yeah.
Boomers need it, millennials need it, our Xers need it, everyone in between is looking for certain levels of flexibility, whether it's from when I start my work to when I end my work to how I choose to manage my workday. And so some of that I thought was really interesting information, that's kind of one trait across the generations that really stood out as significant. And then as I really reflect on generations, just kind of what generations really have very specific usage and needs, and just kind of the information we received about the millennial generations, where their needs for mental wellness and support, because that particular generation tends to have more anxiety related issues, more needs for wellness, more desire for wellness and wellness benefits and trends. So
let me ask you a quick question about that, because I've seen something similar, and I wonder if it's just they're more aware, or if I'm an X, so I'll just throw, or Ryan is too, so I'll just throw it out there. Maybe our generation just suppressed that stuff, in a bad way, not a good way. And so I just wonder your take on, are they just more self-aware, or do you think the previous generations just basically, you put your head down, you did your work, and then you didn't express those things? I mean, maybe you suppressed them actively. Like, what do you think?
It's such a good question. I did ponder that as I was, preparing for this talk. And I think, the boomers generation, people even coming in, the end of the boomers, which is,
Right.
I'm one of those folks. I think we just had to push through. We're trailblazers on a lot of things,
Look, right. Oh, yeah. Well,
and
especially, yeah,
and
because
even
you're coming
women's
out of the
issues.
military.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of things happened. And I think, there was a presenter, I think about people who were early adopters talking about generations. And it's, Morris Massey, if you remember Dr. Morris Massey,
Yeah, of
he used to
course.
talk about what you are now is from where you were when, or something to that
Right.
degree. And
Right.
so I do think that the generations have significant impacts. The millennials just had a different upbringing. We all have had different upbringings based upon our generations, our parents,
Right.
our values. And I do think that they've been exposed to things. And, now that none of the other generations have had to deal with, but now it's very much acceptable for us
Right.
to raise our hand and say, I need some help. I've got some struggles.
It's so much
yeah,
healthier. I
it
mean, to be able
certainly is. Yes.
especially when you're dealing with mental health, people feel open enough now where they can talk about the things that they need, or the anxiety, the problems that they have, or the things that are going
Mm-hmm.
on. Like I grew up in that era where it's just, rub some dirt on it and do a couple laps around the track. Walk it
Walk it
off.
off.
It's like, pretty sure,
Walk it off. Go
pretty
out at
sure I have a
breakfast, come to
compound
dinner.
fracture, but all right, I'll just go walk it off.
Well,
Yeah.
if you think about it,
Yeah.
when we grew up, there wasn't therapy, there wasn't family therapy. I mean, if you went to therapy, if like you were like
Oh,
something
yeah.
was really,
You were wrong.
really
Just
bad,
something was
now
Stigma.
that stigma has completely
Mhm.
shifted to being something that is a very, very good thing. So if you think
100%.
about just how our
Right.
own trends about how we see wellness, it has shifted significantly over the years, right?
Right. In a good way.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like, So I was looking through the report, and for those that are listening, we'll drop it in the notes somewhere. But in the report,
Mhm.
you have a chart of all the generations, and it's broken out by different categories. Run us through some of those differences there. But I think that chart is just fantastically laid out, very easy to understand.
etc.
Well, it's interesting. You know, we have a lot of different data points, and what I hear from clients quite a bit is that once there has been a remote or hybrid opportunity, people want to embrace that. And getting
Right.
people to come back to the office is tricky. And I was just talking with a panelist at this From Day One conference who was saying, you know, that employers that are doing it right are saying, okay, we're going to have an event at the office. There's some specific reason for you to come back
Right.
versus, okay, we just want you to show up because we're paying rent.
We want to see your
And we
work.
want to see you in all those Zoom calls that you're doing at home, but you know, we're going to just make you show up just to check the box, right? So don't do those kinds of things. So it's interesting what we're
Right.
seeing happen, and you know how we have to change our behavior as employers because of you know the circumstances we've just lived through, right? Yeah,
Right.
very interesting.
What other findings struck you from the report?
Well, I think there's a lot of nuggets of information here, and when I think about a lot of the clients that we work with, I think this is very representative of what we're seeing across our mid-market client base. I also find it very interesting that we can take this information and while it is very interesting, I believe, to help serve as a guide for an employer, it also is an opportunity for the employer to say, wow, these are some national and international findings by generation, by employee benefit needs, and we really need to dig in and find out what's going on with our own workforce so that if our workforce is mirroring this information, I think it creates a very strategic advantage for an employer to be able to even create a more strong workplace and become an even greater employer of choice. So this kind of information, I think, is very powerful for employers that are looking to really better understand not only what's going on with employees across a wide variety of generations, but to be able to get more intimate with their own employees and say, hey, we've got this information. Now we're really curious. Is this relevant to you? What are your needs? Because what we saw here was just basic employee benefits is not going to cut it any longer. We saw that here in the report. Now it's about how do we customize these offerings so that we're really getting to what our teams and what our colleagues are wanting to have and being able to provide for that.
What's the best way to get that data from employees? Like, you know, it used to be when we do, maybe in September, we'd do a survey and then gather data and then go out to the market and kind of we'd prune some things. So whatever benefits weren't being used, we'd kind of pull those back. Things that were being used a lot, we'd probably double down on some of those things. But that was kind of a once a year type of mentality, which I know things have changed since then. But like, when you guide clients through this process, what's your best advice on, you know, getting the employees and finding out from them, either validating or maybe even getting some ideas from them on things that they should add to their benefits array?
Well, this is an overarching theme that we're seeing is being empathetic and compassionate to employees. And employers are winning when they show empathy and they're meeting the needs of their employees, finding out what they are and meeting their needs. So what I recommend to employers is to find ways where they are interacting with their employees. They're actively listening, asking questions, understanding what their needs are. It can be as simple as an employee engagement survey that covers needs, benefits, flexibility. It covers a wide variety of issues that an employer would want to know about being able to meet those needs of their employees. 2, training supervisors for how to talk to their team members. It's not enough just to take a supervisory position as a promotion. It comes with a tremendous amount of responsibility. And we're seeing employers reinvesting in those leaders so that they know how to talk to their team members and they know how to be more empathetic and compassionate and being able to accommodate the needs that employees are having.
Quick question around that, because first of all, I'm glad you went there. But also, and this is dated, so please update the audience, is training as it relates to what benefits they
Oh,
have.
yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like, this has been a long-standing, bit for benefits managers, people in the total reward space in general, that they have great benefits. Their employee base doesn't know exactly what they have or how to use it, etc. So when you're talking about the training for managers to be empathetic and how to be a great manager and be empathetic, etc., that triggered me to then think, well, how do we train them on like the benefits that are there that they can take advantage of?
That's such a good question. And I think one of the things that I encourage human resources leaders and professionals to do is constantly look at how we are educating and re-educating our workforce. And we have to market to our employees. I've always felt like the HR department should be the biggest cheerleader for the organization, explaining the benefits, making sure people understand things in very simple terms. And engaging the family is a great way to do that too, so that including them in some of these opportunities and sending mailers to home, whether it's newsletters or total compensation statements at the end of the year, so that the family gets to see, oh, wow, these are all these benefits. And oh, maybe we should be participating in some of these activities. But it is constant. It's a challenge for the HR teams when they have so much on their plate, but to find effective ways to market to employees about the value proposition, the investment the employer is making, I think is absolutely crucial.
Yeah, there's nothing worse, and Ryan's been to this bit. There's nothing worse than going through an exit interview and then finding that one of the reasons that the person quit was because of some benefit, something that wasn't there, and it was there. Like, we have really terrible vision insurance, et cetera, blah, 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 blah. And that's one of the reasons that contributed to me leaving. It's like, our vision insurance is fantastic.
Right.
It's like, it's a Cadillac plan. Like, it's, but they didn't know that. And again, I did this bit at, I think it was a World at Work years ago, where I'm like, a benefit isn't a benefit if they don't know it's a benefit.
Tuesday on NBC, Jimmy Fallon and Bozoma St. John host the highly anticipated new competition show.
I hired 10 creatives from all walks of life. They will be battling it out to see who can impress the world's biggest brands.
This is a huge opportunity.
This is the battle for the next big idea.
This is not play.
We're spending millions of dollars.
I'm so excited to embark on this adventure with all of you.
May the best idea win!
On Brand with Jimmy Fallon. Series premiere Tuesday on NBC.
Wish you could become a morning person? You know the type, up before the sun, early morning runs, first one to the office with donuts and a smile. How do they do it? Easy. With the new Galaxy Watch 8, sleep tracking and personalized insights from Samsung Health help you improve so you can wake up to a whole new you. One who, dare I say it, skips the snooze? It's possible. Train your sleep with Galaxy Watch 8. Learn more at Samsung.com. Requires compatible Samsung Galaxy phone, Samsung Health app, and Samsung account.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not communicated properly.
Over-communicated.
Yeah. AB, I've got as you read through the report and you go through the findings, what is that one key area of the report? What's that one key finding that you just found and made you think, wow,
well,
that's amazing?
I think that there's different benefits that employees are desiring that vary by generation. So I think when I read the report, what was really enlightening for me was just to see some of my maybe some of my own perceptions about what some of my needs are. It's like, wow, this is validated for my generation. And to see that we have an opportunity as employers to meet our employees based upon their generational and family needs. And people really want a good benefit package, and it makes such a big difference. And I can see that even from our talent acquisition team, our recruiting team within consulting, people do leave companies if the packages aren't there. And, there are companies that are recruiting away really good team members for maybe, they're just better marketers, right? They tell a really good story. So I think as an employer, we have a distinct advantage if we can understand what our demographics are for our teams. And not every employer,
what do they need?
Not every employer has all 4 generations, but if they do, this is a huge opportunity to say, wow, things are different based upon your generation, and how can we be able to meet what your needs are. So I think it's just, for me, that was really exciting to see all of the charts and representations and what those different needs are by generation.
Well, the business case to the CFO can and should be, this is a recruitment strategy, a retention strategy. It's not just providing benefits just because we have to provide benefits, or even we feel like we have to provide benefits. No, we're providing benefits because it's just a savvy way to recruit and retain great talent. And now the game becomes, as you've already said, it becomes a game of personalization. What does this particular employee group need from us, and how do we personalize it to them? And then how do we over communicate it or communicate it so often to where they know what they have?
It's, this is what's really interesting to me as well, in addition to this very point, William, is that 78% of employees now feel that their employer is responsible for helping them become net better off. 78%, that's up from 67% before the pandemic. Wow. And employees are looking for whole person health benefits. So physical health, mental health, social, and financial. Yeah. So I found that really interesting as I was thinking, wow, these are great conversations to have with our employees, even taking this report and having some discussions with employees about, wow, this is a report we got. What do you think about this? It's just, I think it's such a great conversation starter to get things moving.
I think that number goes up next year.
I think it continues to go up. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and William, we've had this conversation, the loyalty or the relationship between the employee and the employer has changed dramatically through all of the generations. And what we once had, what our grandparents and our grandparents' grandparents once had with their employer, no longer exist. And so we're on the open market all of the time, because we're going to go from employer to employer if that benefit is that much better. And it could just be a little better, but it's enough to make you consider having conversations and making that switch. And I think whole person
I don't
health
know if it's just the benefits. I think it's the communication from the C-suite about caring about the whole person.
It's everything.
So you've got to back that up with benefits that then do that, of course. So it can't just be words, because if it's just words, it's not going to end well. But I mean, I think
we don't have the retirement and the pensions, so the whole health, whole person health is taking place.
If the C-suite doesn't see that as a great opportunity, they're missing the point. Like, that's not a bad number. That's a number. That's a great number, because that means that's what they desire.
Yeah.
Well, now we know what they desire. Okay. Well, now we just need to build a plan and a communication strategy around what they desire, and we can keep our talent. We have a chance of keeping our talent. Hell, I'd rather know. Like, I want a number to go up.
Yeah, I think if these numbers are, I haven't seen them, but I would love to see the correlation of length of time of service in a company as it relates to how well these benefits are being communicated and
Mhm.
given to the
Mhm.
employees, the whole person
Well, and
health
it's
benefits.
interesting, over time we've seen that the employer provides the baseline of education when the employee experience, if you think about that for just a minute. So an employee joins an organization, it's the organization's responsibility to talk with those new team members about policies, procedures, behaviors, expectations. And generations ago, it was, okay, it's all based on the family. What does that family provide as those values, policies, procedures? But now, because we have so many backgrounds, so many different demographics, so many different types of people in the workforce from a variety of backgrounds, now it's the responsibility of the employer. And what I think is really interesting is employees expect the employer to help them grow as a person. So, that growth isn't coming from networks and family and other places. It's an expectation that my employer is going to be the one to really help me with my growth. So that's really significant and interesting, I think.
Which we see that in the skills market too, Amy. And what's tracking is right next to that is my personal development, my corporate development, and things that I'll be able to do and change, etc. So making their skills better and more appropriate to what they want to do next. That tracks with everything that all the conversations that we're having around skills and upskilling and all of that stuff. So it kind of makes sense that they would also want a more well-rounded kind of approach to, I say wellness, but just looking at being a better person. They want to be a better person, both skills-wise, but they also want all those support systems in place around, as you said, the financial wellness, your health wellness, etc. So that tracked for me.
Yeah. Right. I think a lot of that, it's I think common sense to a lot of people, though. The amount of hours that we spend at work versus a two household or two parent working household. Parents come home 5, 6, 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. You have 2 hours with your family before the kids have to get ready for bed, do their homework, go to sleep. You're more time with your employer. And so I think the expectation is shifting or has shifted and will continue to shift.
Something else that I plan to kind of dive into a little bit more about this. As you review the report, there's a staggering number here that I think we should be mindful of, and that is that 65% of full-time employees at large companies have struggled with at least one unmet basic need. 65%.
2/3. Wow. And define for the audience kind of unmet need, meaning what?
Well, I think, when we take a look at, basic needs, food, home, shelter, Maslow.
Maslow's hierarchy.
And, there's more information in the report about that. But when I think about that, that's just staggering that we still have in these large companies, employees that have something significant happening in their home life that is going to require some attention. And that's something that an employer has a huge opportunity to be able to, target in and be able to help that employee group that's having those kinds of issues. So something that I actually hadn't expected to see in the report. I was surprised at that number, and I thought, wow, that's
a big number.
Yeah.
It's a daunting number too, because if the executives know, then they can potentially do something about it. If benefits leaders know, then they can potentially do. But if they don't know, and it's not being communicated, or they're not surveying, and they're not finding out, like you said very early on, it's like you got to get to know your employees, and that's not a one and done. That's a kind of a relentless pursuit of understanding what their desires and needs are. This is an unmet need, and 2/3, again, 2/3 of your workforce is that's a big number.
Exactly, it sure is.
Anything else shock you in the report, or not in the report, but in the findings?
Well,
so anything else that stuck out?
I find this very interesting and very valuable information for employers to be able to understand what the differences are by generations in the workforce, the mental health conditions and prevalences of ADHD, depression, anxiety by generation. Our millennials, are the highest in those utilizations of those services, and or what their needs are in those particular areas. And, so just, I find it incredibly interesting and informative information for employers to be able to have these data points, to be able to go back and, again, start some conversations, start talking to employees. And I think the biggest thing that we need to really think about here is, that care and compassion for the employee, to understand that we've got 4 different generations that have very different needs. And now's an opportunity for us to be able to, as employers, to be able to get to know our employees at a different level and find out what kind of needs are going unmet, that as an employer, perhaps if we can fill that void, we can really make a difference in someone's life.
Every minute your finance team spends wrestling with data is a minute lost. Insight Software's AI-powered insights instantly move you from complexity to clarity. Automated analysis, real-time reporting, strategic recommendations, all at your fingertips. Transform how your finance team works and watch your business grow. Stop wasting time. Start making smarter decisions. Learn more at insightsoftware.com/AI.
Well, one last question from me, Ryan. I'm sure you got something. You've been with a ton of different great benefits leaders. Kind of what's the traits that you see in those leaders that you, here's what, William, if you wanted to make a great benefits leader, here's what they look like. Here's their behaviors, here's how their approach. This is what makes a great benefits leader.
Well, that's a really great question. I'm not sure I have all the answer on that, but I can tell you, I think that, the role of the benefits leader has evolved over time, and they really need to be able to talk strategy, understand the strategy of the benefits, the financial impact, and also being able to be that chameleon to translate that strategy and the financial to the employee base, and be able to understand what the employee base needs and what's going on at the C-suite, and how do we get them talking and create some winning strategies and programs overall. And I think the benefits leaders, they have challenges because, now we are in a time where you've got the 4 generations here in the workplace, and you've got to meet the needs of the company as well as that of the employees. So it's a very important and critical role to be able to understand not only the strategy, but the details and the communication of these programs in ways that people can really understand and embrace. So I think the benefits leaders of today and tomorrow are going to be people that executives are going to be leaning on for their insights into these matters, as well as the employee base to be looking to those folks to help provide programs that really meet the needs of the organization as a whole.
And Amy, along those lines, I think my final question here is going to be, how does an employer know that they actually have a problem that they need to address in the employee base? Is it just a talent issue where people are just exiting the company at alarming rates? Is it chatter through listening? How do they know this?
My final question, but mine's also no.
You get one final question. That's the exact definition of final.
It's where Ryan's saying, where do they know where they have a problem? What it just triggered for me is, how do they know they're doing it well? Mm-hmm. So both sides of that. Thanks, Ryan, because that is actually, I'd love your take on both sides of that.
Well, then I have a final question. How do you know they're doing mediocre?
Well,
this is the porridge approach, right?
She's like, I'm never coming back on here.
It's a great question. And, I have to get my crystal ball out, for some of this, if you will. But I do think there are metrics within, our HR teams that historically we pay attention to. Turnover clearly is one of them. There's utilization of benefits, what benefits are people using, certain employers are able to receive certain more great data points about benefits. But I do think this is an ongoing communication opportunity, and it takes time, and it takes getting to know team members and investing in getting feedback. I know our organization surveys colleagues frequently. At least once a quarter, we're getting communication, sometimes more frequently than that, about what's our opinion about something. What do we value? What's most important? And I do think, in larger organizations, that has to come in the form of surveys and then relying on managers to be able to connect individually with teams. But I do think training and education of leaders is critical. I do think, making sure that there's ongoing outreach to employees and, watching turnover and other key HR department metrics along with some utilization data points. There's a lot of different data points that the organization can look at to see what they think would be significant. And certainly we've got some experts on our team that can help with designing and developing that as well. So having good trusted resources to determine those metrics, I think, is important.
This has been perfect. Amy, thank you so much. I know you're super busy, but thank you for coming on the show and taking us through the report. Absolutely appreciate it.
My pleasure. I appreciate the time. It's great to get to know the two of you, and thanks for having me.